Imagine a world where the air itself seemed sharper, where the Earth's breath was cold and vast, stretching from horizon to horizon. It was a time when ice ruled not just the poles but shaped continents, carving mountains and valleys, commanding oceans and winds. Beneath the slow, grinding weight of glaciers, life endured, adapted, and in many ways thrived. This was the world of the Ice Age, a chapter of Earth's story that feels both distant and eerily familiar. For more than 2 million years, immense sheets of ice advanced and retreated in cycles, sculpting the face of our planet and testing every living thing that called a home. But amid this frozen challenge, an astonishing cast of creatures arose. Beasts of staggering size and strength, adapted perfectly for a harsh and shifting world. The Ice Age was not a single, unbroken winter. It was a series of rhythms, cold glacial periods alternating with warmer interludes. Forests expanded and retreated. Grasslands stretched across continents, only to vanish again under walls of ice. These climatic dances gave rise to ecosystems unlike anything we see today, and within them, to giants. Mammoths with curved tusks as long as a man was tall roamed the tundra. Woolly rhinoceroses grazed on frozen plains. Saber-toothed cats stalked bison across snowy valleys. There were enormous ground sloths lumbering through the forests of South America, armored glyptodonts like living tanks, and cave bears that could tower over any human who might cross their path. This was an age of titans, a world where life answered cold with creativity and scale. What's striking is how diverse these giants were. Across the globe, nature found countless ways to adapt to ice and scarcity. In North America, herds of mammoths and mastodons shaped entire ecosystems, their movements carving migration routes through forests and grasslands. In Europe and Siberia, reindeer and musk oxen shared the tundra with steppe bison and woolly rhinos. Their fates intertwined the ebb and flow of the glaciers. In Australia, strange marsupial giants, like the massive wombat-like diprotodon, dominated the open woodlands, while in South America, saber-toothed cats known as smilodons prowled among herds of prehistoric horses and camels. Even islands, though small, hosted their own giants. Dwarf elephants on Mediterranean shores, and hippos reduced in size, but still kings of their isolated realms. The Ice Age world was not just cold. It was complex, dynamic, alive. At the heart of these frozen landscapes lay one of the most extraordinary biomes Earth has ever seen, the so-called Mammoth Steppe. Stretching from France across northern Europe, through Siberia, and all the way into Alaska and Yukon, it was an unbroken ocean of grass and sedge, spanning half the world. Despite the chill, it teemed with life. Grasses thrived under the cold sun, and vast herds of grazing animals fed on them, supporting predators that rival the great cats of Africa today. This steppe was not barren. It was vibrant, loud, and crowded. It was the Ice Age's Serengeti. To imagine it properly, picture the soundscape: the distant rumble of bison hooves, the low calls of mammoths communicating across miles, the wind brushing through frozen grasses, the sharp cry of an eagle overhead. Life in this world moved in cycles, migrations dictated by temperature and daylight, births synchronized to fleeting seasons of abundance. Everything was finely tuned to survival, and the key to that survival was adaptation, the endless evolutionary experiment playing out on the cold canvas of Pleistocene. These animals were masterpieces of design. The woolly mammoth, for instance, wore a dense double coat of fur, with an insulating underlayer so fine it trapped air like down. Beneath its skin lay a thick pad of fat, a natural armor against the cold. Its long, curved tusks were not just weapons but tools, for sweeping snow aside to reach buried grasses, or for social displays that established rank and attracted mates. The woolly rhinoceros had a similar strategy: dense fur, thick skin, and a great forward-curving horn to plow through snowdrifts. Even predators evolved for the cold. The saber-toothed cat's massive canines could pierce thick hides, while its powerful build allowed it to wrestle prey larger than itself. Further south, where climates were milder, Ice Age giants found different ways to thrive. In South America, ground sloths the size of elephants used their enormous claws to pull down tree branches. Armored glyptodonts, relatives of armadillos, carried shells so heavy that few predators could harm them. In the waters off the coast, sea cows and giant seals fed in cold oceans rich with plankton. Each species was a solution, a living answer to the challenges of its environment. Yet, for all their magnificence, these giants were not invincible. The Ice Age was a time of constant change, and with each new cycle, the world shifted dramatically. As glaciers advanced, habitats shrank. As they retreated, new lands opened. For some species, this rhythm was a test of endurance. For others, an opportunity to spread. But the balance was delicate. Even small shifts in temperature or rainfall could unravel entire ecosystems. When the grasses of the mammoth steppe gave way to mosses and shrubs, the grazers struggled. When cold tightened its grip, forests vanished. When warmth returned, the ice melted. But with it came floods, changing coastlines, and altered migration routes. Still, for hundreds of thousands of years, these animals endured. Their fossils tell a story of persistence, not fragility. They adapted to new climates, to new terrains, and sometimes even to new predators. Because by the end of the Ice Age, a new kind of creature had appeared, clever, tool-using, and tireless. Unlike the saber-toothed cat or the cave lion, this predator didn't rely on claws or fangs. It relied on thought. Humans were not yet the rulers of the world, but their presence was being felt. Faintly at first, then unmistakably. As they spread across continents, they entered a land already filled with giants. And for a time, they lived among them. Imagine that moment. A human hunter standing before a mammoth herd, feeling the ground tremble beneath his feet. The Ice Age was more than a world of beasts. It was a stage where humans began to define themselves. Firelight against snow, tools made of bone and stone, cave walls painted with images of the very creatures that shared their world. To those early people, the great beasts were not abstractions of prehistory. They were neighbors, rivals, food, and gods. The mammoth and the bison weren't myth. They were life itself. This coexistence didn't last forever, but in its time it was profound. The Ice Age was a crucible that forged much of what we recognize as human today. Cooperation, creativity, and curiosity born of necessity. To understand the giants, we must also understand the world that shaped them and the species that ultimately outlived them. Because in that frozen world, a delicate balance existed between nature's might and nature's vulnerability. A balance that would soon tip in ways no creature could have foreseen. The story of those vanished giants isn't just about extinction. It's about transformation. It's about the Earth's ability to give rise to incredible forms of life, and then, through time and change, to take them away again. In the chapters ahead, we'll follow that story, from their rise to their mysterious disappearance, and uncover what their world can still teach us about survival, adaptation, and the fragile bond between life and climate. When the last great glaciers began to withdraw, the Ice Age world trembled with change. It was as if the planet itself was taking a slow, deep breath after a long-held frost. Across the continents, rivers surged with meltwater, carving new paths through rock and soil. The oceans rose, swallowing ancient coastlines. Forests began creeping northward, reclaiming land that had been barren tundra for tens of thousands of years. The cold plains that had once sustained vast herds of mammoths and bison were now being replaced by thickets of birch and pine. For the giants, this was both a beginning and an ending. Some adapted, many did not. Climate had always been the quiet architect of evolution, shaping life with slow precision. But this time, its changes were unusually rapid. In geological terms, the planet shifted almost overnight. The once dominant mammoth steppe, the grassland ecosystem that had fed countless species across the northern hemisphere, began to fragment. Grasses that had thrived in dry, frozen soil gave way to mosses and shrubs that supported far fewer grazers. The great herds, once numbering in the tens of thousands, began to thin. For creatures built to endure cold, abundance had always come at a cost. When warmth returned, their advantage melted away. But it wasn't just the warming climate that tested them. Something else had arrived. Something far smaller, yet far more adaptable. Humans, those resourceful primates who had learned to master fire and fashion tools from bone and stone, were spreading across every continent. For much of the Ice Age, they had been few, scattered, and cautious, living in the margins of a dangerous world. But as the ice withdrew, humans flourished. They followed the herds across open plains and over frozen land bridges. They hunted, they built, and above all, they learned. In a world filled with predators, humans were a new kind, one that relied not on strength or speed, but on coordination, planning, and imagination. To many of the Ice Age giants, the arrival of these toolmakers would have seemed inconsequential, at least at first. A mammoth, weighing 6 tons and standing 4 meters tall, could crush a person beneath its feet without even noticing. A saber-toothed cat could kill with a single strike. But humans didn't hunt alone. They worked together, strategizing, communicating, anticipating. A group of hunters with spears tipped in sharpened stone could bring down prey far larger than themselves. They used fire to drive animals into traps, and they wasted little. Meat was food, bones became tools, hide became clothing and shelter. Their survival depended on understanding the behavior of the giants, and they were very good at it. Even so, it would be too simple to say that humans alone were responsible for the vanishing of the great beasts. The truth is subtler, and in many ways more haunting. The end of the Ice Age was a perfect storm of stressors. The warming climate shrank the open steppe, forcing herbivores into smaller ranges where food was scarce. As their numbers fell, predators and scavengers, including humans, competed more fiercely. Some species, like the woolly mammoth, survived surprisingly long in isolated refuges. Others, like the giant ground sloths of South America, dwindled until the last of their kind disappeared into legend. It was not a single blow that felled them, but the cumulative weight of change. What we know from fossils, bones, and ancient DNA paints a picture of decline stretched across centuries. Populations didn't collapse overnight. They ebbed, fluctuated, and then quietly failed to recover. The youngest mammoth fossils from Siberia date to around 10,000 years ago. In the Arctic islands north of Russia, a small, isolated group of mammoths persisted until just 4,000 years ago, long after the pyramids of Egypt were built. Imagine that, while humans were laying the foundations of civilization, a remnant herd of shaggy giants still wandered the tundra, ghosts of an older world, unaware they were the last of their kind. In North America, the story was just as dramatic. When humans crossed into the continent, perhaps 15,000 years ago, they encountered an ecosystem teeming with extraordinary life. Mastodons, mammoths, camels, giant bison, short-faced bears, and lions larger than those of Africa. Within a few thousand years, most of these animals were gone. Some scientists call it a blitzkrieg extinction, suggesting that human hunting may have wiped them out quickly. Others argue that climate change had already pushed them to the brink, and humans were simply the final pressure in a long cascade. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between. What's clear is that these extinctions changed the world forever. When the megafauna vanished, so did the ecosystems they supported. The mammoth steppe, once sustained by grazing and trampling herds that fertilized and maintained its grasses, began to disappear. Without the animals that kept it open, shrubs and trees took over. The landscape changed, and with it, the rhythm of life. The very structure of the biosphere shifted, creating the environments we now recognize as tundra and boreal forest. The giants didn't just live in their world, they were their world. And when they were gone, the earth itself seemed to exhale and settle into a new form. For humans, the disappearance of the great beasts was bittersweet. On one hand, it opened space for our species to thrive. Fewer predators, more stable climates, and increasing access to resources allowed small bands of hunter-gatherers to expand and diversify. Yet, traces of reverence for the lost giants remain in myths, cave art, and stories passed down through millennia. To early humans, the beasts were not mere animals. They were symbols of power, endurance, and mystery. The paintings on the walls of Chalvet and Lascaux aren't just depictions of hunts. They are acts of remembrance, a kind of dialogue between human imagination and the wild. As the Ice Age faded, so too did its colossal creatures, leaving behind a quieter, smaller world. The saber-toothed cats, the giant sloths, the mammoths, they all slipped into extinction one by one. Only a few species managed to bridge the divide into our modern era. The bison, the musk ox, the caribou, and the elephant, distant cousins of the vanished titans. In them, we see faint echoes of what once was. But extinction in the natural world is rarely final in its influence. The bones of these giants lie buried beneath permafrost and peat, preserving stories of resilience and loss. Their DNA lingers, their tusks and teeth whispering of climates past. And today, as scientists uncover those remains, we're learning that their disappearance was not merely a tragedy of nature, but a lesson in balance. How life, even at its strongest, is bound to the climate that sustains it. The Ice Age didn't just end with melting ice. It ended with the transformation of Earth's living fabric. The disappearance of megafauna wasn't only the loss of species. It was a closing of an entire chapter in evolution. It reshaped vegetation, predator-prey dynamics, even the flow of nutrients through soil and rivers. Every vanished beast left a silent gap in the web of life, a gap that no species has quite filled since. Yet, despite all that was lost, something profound remained. The memory of that age, carried forward in fossils and stories, and perhaps in us. The Ice Age shaped humanity just as much as we shaped its end. It taught our ancestors to adapt, to cooperate, to see patterns in the chaos of nature. In its crucible, our species learned what it meant to endure. And as the cold faded and the forest rose again, humanity stepped into a new dawn. One where the echoes of those vanished giants still linger in the bones of the earth and in the imagination of every generation that wonders what it must have been like to walk among them. When the last echoes of the Ice Age faded, the earth entered a quieter rhythm, warmer, greener, and more familiar to us. Yet beneath that calm lay the memory of an age of monsters, and its ending left ripples that still shape the world today. The disappearance of the great beast was not just a biological event. It was an ecological turning point, the moment when balance tipped and entire systems were remade. What vanished in bone and blood also vanished in behavior, in movement, in the very energy of the planet's ecosystems. Without the giants, the world slowed, and in their absence, new forms of life and new vulnerabilities began to emerge. To understand what that really means, we must look at how these colossal creatures once worked within their environments. The mammoths, for example, were more than grazers. They were architects. As they trampled through grasslands, they uprooted young trees, churned the soil, and spread nutrients through their dung. Their sheer weight sculpted the land, maintaining the open expanses of the mammoth steppe. In their wake, grasses grew richer and thicker, feeding the next generation of grazers. The same was true of bison, mastodons, and ground sloths. Each species played a role in shaping the vegetation, water systems, and even the climate around them. Remove one and the balance shifted slightly. Remove them all, and entire ecosystems unraveled. When these animals disappeared, landscapes began to change in subtle but profound ways. The grasslands that had once stretched endlessly across Eurasia and North America began to shrink, replaced by denser forests. Without herds to graze and compact the soil, woody plants spread unchecked. The open habitats that had supported predators like saber-toothed cats and cave lions dwindled, forcing them into decline as well. In this way, extinction was contagious. The loss of the herbivores led to the loss of the carnivores, and together they pulled down the scaffolding of their shared world. The rhythm of nature changed, slower, quieter, and less diverse. For humans, these transformations brought both challenge and opportunity. The disappearance of the great herds may have forced early people to diversify their diets, to fish more, to gather, and eventually to farm. Some scientists even suggest that the end of the Ice Age giants helped drive the birth of agriculture. When large prey became scarce, humans turned their ingenuity toward domesticating smaller animals and cultivating plants. In a sense, the extinction of the megafauna nudged humanity toward civilization. The old world of hunting mammoths gave way to the new world of sowing seeds. And from that shift came the first villages, the first cities, and eventually the first stories of gods and kings. But there's another way to look at it, that the world lost something irreplaceable when those giants vanished. Imagine the planet alive with movement, every horizon filled with massive forms, each ecosystem powered by creatures whose existence shaped everything around them. Today, no animal on land rivals that scale. The largest mammals left are mostly confined to the oceans, where whales still move like ghosts of another era. On land, the elephant, the mammoth's surviving cousin, stands as the last echo of a vanished lineage. And even it faces pressures from the same force that once altered the fate of the mammoth, humanity. As scientists study the bones of the extinct megafauna, they uncover patterns that go beyond simple extinction. The story of these creatures is also a story of climate cycles and resilience, how life bends but endures, even through catastrophe. In the layers of permafrost, mammoth tusks and bison skulls tell us that adaptation was not always enough. Climate change, when rapid and compounded by human expansion, can outpace even evolution's most creative responses. The Ice Age extinctions are not just relics of the past. They are warnings written in the language of deep time. Consider how the giants once influenced the Earth's climate itself. Modern research suggests that their presence helped maintain a balance between grasslands and forests, and by extension, between reflection and absorption of sunlight. Grassy plains reflect more solar radiation than dark forests. With fewer grazers to keep those plains open, the planet may have warmed slightly faster after their extinction. In this way, even in death, the great beasts altered the future. Their disappearance was not merely an end. It was a turning point in the planet's feedback loops, a moment when the relationship between life and climate shifted permanently. Yet, despite their physical absence, traces of the giants linger in DNA frozen beneath Arctic soil, in preserved dung, in the pollen trapped in lake sediments that tells us what they ate and where they roamed. Each discovery adds another thread to the great tapestry of their world. From these remnants, we reconstruct not only what they looked like, but how they lived, and perhaps how they thought. Elephants today display remarkable memory and social intelligence, and it's likely their Ice Age relatives were no different. Mammoth herds probably had matriarchs, remembered routes, and shared bonds that stretched across generations. These weren't just cold-blooded survival machines. They were communities. When they vanished, entire networks of memory and culture vanished with them. And yet, as humans uncover these stories, something remarkable happens. We begin to feel connected again. The Ice Age might be gone, but in studying it, we rediscover our place in nature's continuum. We are not separate from those vanished worlds. We are products of them. The same pressures that forged mammoths and saber-tooths forged us. The drive to adapt, to explore, to endure. The difference is that we have learned to see time itself, to recognize patterns across millennia, and to understand cause and effect in ways no other species ever could. That understanding carries both privilege and responsibility. In recent years, science has begun to ask an extraordinary question. Could some of those lost creatures return? Through advances in genetics, researchers have recovered fragments of DNA from frozen mammoth remains, assembling them like puzzles to recreate what was lost. The goal is not to clone a mammoth outright, but to engineer a hybrid, a living elephant modified with mammoth traits, capable of surviving in cold climates. The idea sounds like fiction, yet it rests on solid scientific foundations. If successful, such a creature could help restore parts of the ecosystems that once depended on the giants. By reintroducing large grazers to the tundra, some believe we might even slow permafrost melt and carbon release, using ancient life to heal modern wounds. But beneath the science lies a deeper question. Should we? Bringing back an extinct species is not merely a technical challenge. It's an ethical one. The Ice Age beasts vanished for reasons rooted in climate and humanity, forces that have not gone away. Reviving them would mean confronting the same fragility that caused their end. Yet the very fact that we can ask this question, that we can even imagine reawakening the Ice Age, speaks to the strange, enduring power these creatures hold over us. They are not just fossils. They are symbols of what the Earth once was, and perhaps what it could be again. The story of the vanished giants, then, is not only about death, but about memory, nature's memory and our own. It reminds us that everything we see today, from forests to fields, from cities to coastlines, stands atop the bones of earlier worlds. The Ice Age did not truly end. It transformed. Its legacy lives in the genes of elephants, in the shape of landscapes, and in the curiosity that drives us to keep digging, asking, and imagining. In the final part of this journey, we'll explore that legacy, how the story of the Ice Age giants connects to our modern world, what it reveals about the future life on Earth, and why, even now, their ghosts still walk beside us in the snow and silence of our collective memory. The ghosts of the Ice Age still linger, not as monsters or myths, but as whispers in the DNA of life that survived them. The chill of their world may have passed, yet its imprint remains in the creatures, climates, and even in the bones of the earth itself. To understand how the vanished giants continue to shape our present, we must look beyond extinction and into inheritance. Because in truth, the Ice Age never really ended. It simply melted into what came next, carrying echoes of its great beasts into the age of humanity. In the northern tundra, herds of musk oxen graze where mammoths once roamed. Their curved horns and thick coats seem like relics from another time, reminders of an evolutionary strategy that once ruled the planet. Endure the cold, eat the sparse, move endlessly. In Africa and Asia, elephants tread through forests and savannas, their massive feet leaving prints that resemble those of their extinct cousins. When an elephant topples a tree or clears a path through dense vegetation, it performs an ancient ritual, one that mammoths once did on frozen plains. Life repeats its patterns, just in different forms. Yet while nature remembers, humanity often forgets. We walk through landscapes shaped by giants without realizing it. The rich soils of the American Midwest, the fertile valleys of Siberia, even the grassland of Patagonia, all are the product of Ice Age ecosystems built by large herbivores. Their dung fertilized the earth, their trampling aerated it, and their migrations mixed nutrients across continents. The bounty that humans later cultivated was, in many ways, a gift from beasts that no longer exist. We harvest the echoes of their world every day. But there's something else we inherited from that age, the sense of curiosity, of wonder toward the natural world. When early humans painted mammoths and bison on cave walls, they weren't just recording hunts. They were expressing awe. Those creatures were part of the human imagination as much as they were part of the environment. The drawings in places like Lascaux or Chauvet aren't mere art. They are evidence of reverence. In those flickering, torchlit chambers, humans began not only to observe the world, but to reflect on it. Perhaps the first spark of science and storytelling both began in those moments, as people tried to make sense of the giants around them. And in many ways, we're still doing the same thing. Today, scientists peer into ancient genomes, measure isotopes in bones, and reconstruct vanished climates with satellites and supercomputers. The questions haven't changed, only our tools have. What happened to those magnificent creatures? Could it happen again? And what can they teach us about survival in a changing world? These questions are not just about the past. They are about the future we are building. Because the truth is, we now live in another age of giants. Only this time, the giants are invisible. The forces we've unleashed through industry, technology, and population growth move across the planet as powerfully as ice sheets once did. Climate shifts, species vanish, and ecosystems change, not over millennia, but within a single lifetime. In a way, we have become the architects of a new geological epoch, reshaping Earth with the same scale of impact that glaciers once had. The Ice Age teaches us that such power always comes at a cost. Every climate shift leaves its casualties, but it also teaches us something hopeful, that life is resilient. The end of the Ice Age was violent and sudden, yet it gave rise to the world we know today, a planet of forests, rivers, and human possibility. The extinction of the mammoth was not the end of nature's creativity. It was a turning of the page. Even in loss, evolution writes new stories. Each extinction opens a door for adaptation. Each disappearance a lesson in balance. If the vanished giants could speak, perhaps they would tell us that the key to survival is not strength or size, but adaptability, the ability to change when the world demands it. Still, there's a melancholy beauty in what's gone. Standing in a museum before the towering bones of a woolly mammoth or the skull of a cave bear, it's impossible not to feel a quiet ache, a recognition that something vast and alive once shared this planet with us. Their eyes once saw the same stars. Their breath once clouded the same cold air. They were not myths, but neighbors. Their story is our inheritance, and their extinction our first warning. Some scientists and philosophers believe that the best way to honor them is not by bringing them back, but by protecting what remains. Elephants, rhinos, and other modern giants are walking testaments to the Ice Age's legacy, survivors of an era that sculpted life through ice and hunger and time. To lose them now, through our own neglect, would be to erase the last living chapters of that great saga. Their presence keeps the story of the Pleistocene alive, reminding us that the world was once wilder, larger, and far more interconnected than we tend to imagine. But perhaps the most profound legacy of the Ice Age beasts lies not in fossils or DNA, but in perspective. They force us to think on timescales longer than our own lives, to imagine centuries as mere moments, and to see ourselves as participants in a story billions of years old. They remind us that extinction is permanent, that nature's grandeur can vanish quietly, and that our place within it is fragile. Yet at the same time, they show us that even in the face of collapse, life continues, reshaping itself again and again. If we listen carefully, the Ice Age still speaks. It whispers through the winds that sweep across the Arctic plains, through the frozen ground that holds bones older than civilization, through the genes of every elephant that still walks the earth. It tells us that nothing lasts forever. Not the cold, not the giants, not even us, but that everything leaves a trace. Every footprint in snow, every tusk in ice, every story told by those who remember. In that sense, the Ice Age never truly ended. It lives on in memory, in imagination, in science, and in the quiet knowledge that we are part of something ancient, vast, and unfinished. The beasts that rule the Ice Age may be gone, but their shadow still stretches across the world. It lies beneath the soil that feeds us, the climate that sustains us, and the curiosity that drives us to keep asking what came before. The world they left behind is ours to care for now. And perhaps that's a final lesson the vanished giants offer us, that every age, no matter how mighty, must eventually give way, and that what comes next depends on those who remember.